Good afternoon. I'm just right, Johanna. It's clear that removing students from the classroom, even temporarily, can cause permanent feelings of disconnection, hopelessness, and inadequacy. And once at-risk students are separated from school, the path to incarceration can be swift. Especially hard hit are youth of color who become isolated, punished inside schools, pushed out, and then punished in the criminal justice system. Once they get to prison, however, they face limited opportunities for prison rehabilitation. Playful Paul and Super Sam will tell us how this works.
Good afternoon, everybody. Sam and I are going to be discussing the importance and the necessity for a more rehabilitative approach to prison. Specifically, we believe this approach should include more educational opportunities and reentry support for the incarcerated. There are many misconceptions about education in prison that cause the reluctance that we face today with the general public. There are those who make the argument that they don't want their tax dollars going towards education for prisoners because these individuals are just going to commit crimes. This is why we need to discuss the importance that education actually has in recidivism. College for Convicts, which is an article, states that in the state of California, if recidivism was reduced by only 10%, $233 million would be saved by the state. In fact, if only a 2% reduction rate happened with recidivism, the state of California would show to result in significant cost savings for the state. We're able to educate prisoners in a way that is cost effective, and this is what we must demonstrate. Ultimately, correctional education will actually save money. Think about this as a concept. If we put incarcerated individuals into society with little to no educational experience and little to no life experience, they're going to reduce to crime. They're going to commit crimes again, and they're going to find themselves back incarcerated. And the cost of this is extremely detrimental. Instead, we should be educating these individuals so we can prevent this from happening. This summer, I had a class with Professor Foster, and I had the opportunity to meet a man named Michael Satterfield, who was formerly incarcerated. And he wrote an article. In his article titled Beyond the Wall, Michael writes, "Attaining my GED was my first scholastic achievement in prison, and it had a profound effect on me. I sought to change myself because it is what I believe would save me from a cycle of poverty and incarceration." And for 1 second, I want that statement to sink in, because Michael's perception had only education would be the only answer to save him from a life of living behind bars and in poverty. And that says something. It's unfortunate that prison was the first place to acknowledge his educational achievements, but the classes that he took while incarcerated led him to believe that education was his only hope for a brighter future. Michael is now working in the drug counseling system and would not be there today without the education he received while he was incarcerated. Although we recognize the educational opportunities in place being carried out by the inmates in our institutions, for example, GED courses, the NJ-STEP, and even this course right now that we're conducting, still, education inside should be expanded upon and widely more accessible for students inside who cannot afford it. As a whole, the institution needs to change its focus to a rehabilitative approach. We think this change will ensue when institutional requirements change. We think prison staff should be educated on social issues and ethical issues as well. If the prison required their staff to have a background in higher education, the goals of the prison may shift. And this is not to suggest that the individuals themselves that work inside the prisons are uneducated or corrupt. We just believe that certain educational requirements are important for one to be working with incarcerated individuals. We believe changing institutional goals would only attract individuals of higher learning. In result, the field will become more attractive, and this would shift focus towards rehabilitation. Ultimately, we believe continuing classes like our own will only assist in the promotion of education for the incarcerated. Each individual that we had in class that were the inside students, they were able to relate all their stories and connect it with our curriculum. Kathy Bodine, who was a previously incarcerated individual, demonstrated the importance of the kind of learning. She wanted to connect the material to the experiences of the inmates. This helped them learn the subjects and provide them with skills they would later use. Educational programs are very vital to have within the walls, but the method of education prison educators use is just as important. Our class adopted this participatory learning technique, and it allowed students to expand their creativity and discover potential unknown. The change that we desire will not occur until the attitude towards the incarcerated change. I want you guys to take a moment to think about the worst mistake you've ever made in your entire life. And then think about your character and people's perception of you. That's how they view you for the rest of your life. How would that make you feel? And then afterwards, someone told you that you had to be referred to that was you the rest of your life, and you had no opportunity to better yourself. Oftentimes, this is legitimately the case for incarcerated individuals. Prison itself is a punishment. Being away from your family for an extended amount of time is a punishment. There's no reason to punish these individuals even further. It only brings experience. Yes, these people committed crimes, but they are more than the worst mistake. The sole purpose of prison should not be to punish, but rather to educate the individuals and show them how they can change their behavior to become a productive member of society. Promoting education shows that we really want to support incarcerated in bettering themselves, just as we all take action to better ourselves every single day. And I want to end this by just saying, this is something I thought of last night, 2:30 in the morning. I was like trying to familiarize myself with my material. But we really shouldn't let taxes, politics, and a negative stigma regarding the incarcerated people, and we shouldn't let it cloud our judgments on all the issues that we'll be discussing today and have so far, because at the end of the day, we're really talking about human beings, and that's all that matters.
Good afternoon. I'm going to be continuing our discussion by demonstrating the importance of continuing classes similar to our own. For those of you who may be unaware of how our class operated, we were given the opportunity to work with incarcerated students from New Jersey State Prison. Each week, our class met inside the prison where, as a group, we discussed social issues that directly affect the incarcerated. Increasing the opportunity for education and reentry support was a topic we all agreed to be important moving forward. Unfortunately, the incarcerated students did not receive any credit for partaking in this course, and this is something we hope to change in the future. Despite this fact, the program was still extremely beneficial for both the inside and the outside students. Initially, going into the prison, I felt how most of you would probably feel. Anxious, curious, a little bit nervous, but my nerves were quickly eased as I realized that the individuals inside were all eager to learn and ready to work on these topics of shared interest together. After hearing personal stories of those inside, I realized that these individuals are so much more than the worst mistakes they've made. They are all brothers, uncles, fathers, children, family to someone. Being separated from one's family serves the purpose of punishment in prison. Abdul, one of the incarcerated students, knows this difficult nature all too well. During his stay in prison, his young daughter was diagnosed with cancer. He was permitted a bedside hospital visit to see her, and she lived for 5 more years after this visit. When she passed, Abdul was denied a funeral visit to say goodbye. This experience was extremely painful for him, as it would be for any of us. As I mentioned before, this difficult nature is what serves the purpose of punishment in prison, which is why moving forward, we really need to recenter our focus to more rehabilitative efforts that include education and reentry support. I know what some of you may be thinking. Why is education so important for the incarcerated? Why do they need it? Why do they even deserve it? Well, the most effective way to reduce recidivism is to provide the incarcerated with skills that will benefit them upon release. Currently, there's a recidivism rate of about 80% within 5 years of release, and this is certainly a statistic I'm sure we would all like to see reduced. Life skills training and the opportunity for education will help incarcerated individuals seek employment when they are released. We must show support for those wishing to change their behavior. If we continuously tell individuals that they are incapable of change, their behavior will remain and they will likely resort to crime again when they are released. There is often the misconception that those serving a life sentence will never re-enter society. A life sentence does not necessarily mean that the individual will spend their whole life in prison. Through the appeals process and the possibility for parole, the individual does in fact have the opportunity to reintegrate. Even for those who are serving a sentence that may result in their entire life in prison, they still have an effect on society, whether it be those inside the walls or those beyond the walls. They have an effect on those they come in contact with each and every day, be it a fellow inmate or even a correctional officer. It is especially important for incarcerated parents to be able to demonstrate the importance of education to their children through visitation, and they can often do this through their own personal experiences that they have during their programming inside the walls. Being physically separated from society, the incarcerated live an extremely regimented life. There is a defined time each and every day that the individual can eat, change their clothes, shower, spend their money. It can be extremely difficult to leave such a controlled environment and re-enter society where the individual now must learn to do these things for themselves when they often had someone telling them when, where, and how to do these things for themselves in the past. We were practically guaranteeing recidivism if we did not provide any re-entry support. Education also provides a certain sense of self-awareness that is necessary for personal growth. Through education, we are able to reflect on past behavior and decide how we want to change that behavior to better ourselves in the future. The opportunity for education is all the hope that some need to make a better life for themselves. Before I conclude, I'd like to take a moment to discuss one of the assignments that we had in class. The incarcerated students were asked to write one thing they would like society to know about prison. One of the students, Lester, addresses the doubt that he faces by those who believe that he cannot change. He writes, "There are men and women who want to change, who are trying to change, trying to be better people than they were before incarceration. We are being met with resistance by those who believe that we can't change, by those who don't want us to change, and by those who don't believe we should be given a second chance at freedom or life itself. We are being hindered from becoming better people." In response to Lester's words, I believe we need to show the incarcerated that we do want them to change, that we do want them to become better people, that we do believe they're capable of doing so, and we can do this through the methods of education. Thank you.